folks get in, starting off with 14. I will be taking attendance at the beginning and throughout, okay? And who asked for it, May? All right. 30 more seconds. And I will get us started. Okay. Yeah, there's some things I'm gonna save till next week. All right. Hi. Let's start off with a little bit of business. We have a little less than 5 weeks left of school. This week is a short week. You guys have a half a day on Thursday, and we don't meet on Thursday anyway, but I think maybe one of your teachers might be holding a class. And then if you have games and movement, I think you might have games and movement. But you have half a day Thursday and you have no school on Friday. That does not mean your assignments aren't due. That just means like you don't have to log in to any teachers, but our work is still due Friday by 11:59. So remember that, okay? So we have a short week, and then I think we have a day off coming up for Memorial Day. And I think there's another day off. So we have just under 5 weeks of lesson time together. And then you're rising 7th graders. That happens so fast, right? By the end of this, you're going to be in 7th grade. And then, my goodness, you are like sailing through and almost going to be done with middle school. Like I've already graduated you at this point. So this is the first time I've ever had a 6th grade class where I've had to teach the end of it online. So you guys are also extremely special in this sense, right? And it did impact the ability to carry out the curriculum I had planned for you, especially around cooking, right? We're obviously not able to be together and do our cooking lessons, but we're still going to continue with making sure that we get some nutrition and some food talk in while we complete our Story of Stuff curriculum. So let's go through what to expect this week. As our opener, as we've done in the past, we are going to look at last week's assignments. I'm going to look at the discussion question particularly because there were a lot of students who I think were not very clear on the process on what to do. There were a lot of students who did not read the article, and I could see that because I get the stat reports, and I'm going to show you how I see that. And there were a lot of students who didn't complete the agricultural distribution process. And I think that was also just some clarifications that were needed. There were some who did do it, and so kudos to you, but I want to give people an opportunity to answer some questions or ask some questions, and then make sure that you guys understand how to do it. So if you did not do it or you did not do it appropriately, these are 2 things you're still going to have to do this week. And then for our mini lesson, we're going to move from distribution in the material system to the next step, to consumption. So for the past 2 weeks, we've looked at distribution. We looked at how genes and the raw materials for genes are distributed around the world. And then last week, we particularly went to farm to table and looked at the food supply chain. And then we had a little guest, we had guest speakers who came in from one of our community partners, someone we would have been cooking with, Growing Great. And we had a project where we were supposed to research a native recipe. And I did not see a lot of students turn that in. And it could be that they were just all emailed to Megan. So I'm going to double check with her. But remember, we're building our 6th grade cookbook of Native people recipes. So if you did not get that recipe emailed to Megan, make sure you do that. All right. And so this week, we're going to go ahead and do, or not go ahead and do, look, I'm just my talking. We're going to watch Max recorded an amazing cooking demo for us out of the poll we took last week. Overwhelmingly, corn chili was chosen as a recipe to be demoed. Beef stew came in a hot second. And so Max is on today with us. Yes, Sam, and he's going to show us his demo and then have a little time for a Q&A. And then in our closing, as we've done in the past, we are going to do a little Google form of checking for understanding. Do we know what we're supposed to do this week? And do we understand what we did last week? So that's our agenda for today. Remember, if you have any burning questions, I'm going back and forth between the chat. If you have to unmute to ask me something or to let me know like you can't hear me, go ahead and unmute. All right, so let's jump into this. The last 2 weeks, we've had some learning targets. Remembering that learning targets are like the goals for our learning. I'm teaching you something, and by the end of it, my expectation is that you've learned these 3 things. So through the distribution step, you were supposed to be, or by the end of it, you were supposed to be able to identify the processes and the people involved in not just agriculture, but in the distribution process, right? Last week, we tied in agriculture. But ultimately, I wanted you to be able to say, this is what happens in the distribution process. Next, you were supposed to be able to evaluate the sustainability of distribution methods and those practices within a food system. You had to understand what sustainability was or what that means in order to identify what is unstable, right? Unsustainable. And so you were supposed to be able to say throughout the distribution process from farm to table that these were sustainable practices or methods that were being used along the way. And then lastly, you were, as a learning target, supposed to be able to research a Native people recipe so that your recipe can be included in a Native recipe book. So those were our targets for last week. These were the expectations I had for learning and for learning growth. You also had some content vocabulary. And when I was reading the answers to the discussion question, I was definitely seeing a lot of people using the vocabulary word supply chain and using it correctly. And so I was very pleased to see that. I think it was pretty, everyone did, Javier?
Everyone's in the office hours meet. They thought that it was that one.
Oh, are they? Is that where they are?
Yeah.
Did you tell them to come to this one?
I told them that we were in the wrong one, but I could go tell them.
Javier was like, we're in the wrong meet. We were like, we are? And we all just left.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you guys are in the right one. You're right on time. Don't worry. You didn't miss too much. I know it's kind of confusing because I had to push out the virtual office hours for 7th and 8th grade, but it's before your guys's, and I know it's a little confusing. So I was talking about vocabulary and how I was seeing vocabulary showing up in your answers, specifically supply chain, but I think that was a fairly organic way to use this vocabulary word. It was showing up in a lot of the conversations we were having. But I also saw some people using local living economies, which was exciting. I do want to see it used in a more appropriate way, but I think the way it was being used, that we're starting to understand what it means more, right? That in these different parts of our material systems, there are ways for companies to kind of downsize their impact to the local economy where people are living exactly where they are. So that's like our school is in Inglewood. That means that all the companies that are in Inglewood, that have stores in Inglewood or who operate in Inglewood, are providing some kind of economic systems or some kind of funding or education to like our school in Inglewood because we're local, right? I didn't see too many people using workers retention. I do want to see a couple of people try to fit that into some answers this week. Not too many people using retail, but maybe in this new step of consumption, it'll make more sense to use that word. I did see a lot of people using in red transportation. That made sense considering we were talking about distribution. And in the beginning, the first week we talked about distribution, I saw some people using carbon emissions. Start continuing to use these words in your everyday communication, especially in this class, because they will still all make sense in the upcoming weeks. All right. So let's look at discussion question. Everyone should be in their Google Classroom. And where I want you to go is to the discussion question section. It's 3 sections down. If you click into classwork, go down from Google Hangouts, story of stuff, and go to discussion questions. I want you to open that discussion question. I want to point out that the discussion questions are always being graded to the standard of ELD, English Learning Development. What that means is when I give you a reading, an article, or show you a video, I want to make sure that you are able to read that article or watch that video and explain to me orally, like verbally talking, or in writing what you read or what you saw. And in that writing, as we get better in it, it's going to be writing that shows you comparing some facts or contrasting some facts. May, just listen, please. You'll be able to read an informational text and be able to explain to me the problem that you read and what solutions there are, right? I want you to be able to do those things in this reading. And so that's what this discussion question is being graded on. The question was, what is the impact of COVID-19 on our current food supply chain? What I was finding that was a lot of students were answering that question in an opinion, okay? And that's fine. But when you are given informational text, your opinions must be responded with facts, or supported by facts. And so I gave you an article to read in order for you to be able to do that. Before I click into that article, I want you guys to always make sure that you're reading the information that I provide. Because if you're not reading what it is and you're just jumping into the assignment, you're not doing it correctly, right? So it told you to use the article linked below for background on the current issues regarding the food supply chain. I gave you the teacher code for Actively Learn. That's how I'm able to see the statistics of what you've done. In your answer, you were supposed to use one of the vocab words. And in your response to another student, you're supposed to use an academic phrase. We've been doing this for the past 3 weeks, right? So I am expecting to start seeing you doing it on your own without me prompting. So I would like you guys to go ahead and sign into your Actively Learn. Click into it now. When you click it, if you should have already been signed in, and I'm pretty sure I have every single one of you guys. Yeah, I think everyone is on there. But what I'm thinking is happened for some of you who are not answering is that you got to this page and you didn't see the article underneath. All you saw was the assignment directions and then a question. This same question that was asked of you in the Google Classroom. The reason I put the question before the article is because I wanted you to get in the mindset of what you already know, right? So what do you already know? And that's what I was getting, a lot of opinions of what you're hearing, either from the news, from parents, from friends, from reading, maybe from other classes. And that was fine. But then once you put in the answer, it opened the article. And the expectation was that you read the article. And I could tell you who read the article and who didn't because it gives me a list of how many minutes people were on the particular article, right? And so this is just for me as Jane Doe. These are my data. But see how it gives this data here? I get this data for every single student. So I could see who read the article for 13 minutes, who read it for 1 minute. And then I could go into their answers and I could see that, yep, that student definitely didn't read the article because their answers had nothing to do with the question, or it didn't support the question or didn't answer the question. So we don't have time to do it right now, but if you did not complete this article and you did not go in and read the article.
Hi, Mr. Shonda.
The chairman of Tyson Foods warned Sunday that the food supply.
It's okay. So you're going to have to do that. So Michaela, we're on the discussion question. And we were looking at how to access the discussion question and how to access the article. So what I got in answers from a lot of students was that, you know, a lot of people are going to grocery stores and that's how it's impacting the food supply chain. That people are hoarding, or they're collecting a lot of food, or that food isn't able to get from one place to the other. And some of that is true. Some of that is not completely 100% true, but some of that is very true on the impacts, right? But not many people actually use COVID-19 as a cause to that impact, because some of those impacts are things that have happened before COVID-19, right? That some communities don't have access to some food, right? Those are issues. People always need food. That hasn't changed. That people don't necessarily need more food now that we're in quarantine than they did before. People don't necessarily need more food because of COVID-19 than they did before. People have always needed food. So that's not necessarily an impact from COVID-19. But what the article talks about is one particular type of impact, and that was what I was looking for. Okay, so I returned a lot of students' questions to them. Some other students are going to get theirs returned to them this week. If you got it returned, I want you to go back and read the article again, or everybody actually needs to go back, because if you didn't get it returned, you didn't turn it in. Hold on, Javier, I see you. Stay unmuted so you can ask your question in a sec. You're going to go back through and read the article and edit your answer. Your answer must include some resources or support, evidence from this article, all right? Go ahead, Javier. What's your question?
Never mind. But the only reason I was gonna say, the only reason we pretty much did bad on the question was because it doesn't let us access the article until we answer the question.
Right. Exactly. And so I realized that, which is why I wanted you guys to do it again. And it wasn't that you did bad on the question. I told a lot of people you brought up some really good points. And yes, those are some impacts. But then once you read the article, the idea was that you went back here because now you know more information and you can use the article as support. You can continue with your first thought, but you're using the article as evidence and supporting, because that's what happens. We have some ideas about things because we have a little bit of knowledge from here and there. And then we read something, or we watch a movie or a documentary, or we attend a class or a webinar or a workshop, and we learn more information. And so now what we know grows or shifts and change because we have more information. And so now you can write something that's more supported. Does that make sense? There were a lot of you that happened to. Okay, and so I returned it to you with some feedback. And now you're just going to go back through and edit your responses. All right, Jordan, can you still not hear us? You might need to log out and log back into the Hangout. All right, any questions before I move on? All right, awesome. All right, so I want to make sure that you guys understand what I'm saying. You are to go back into your discussion question, because a lot of people, almost everybody needs to do this, not just this class, but Meadow too. You're going to go back and answer the question. You must read the article first. If you didn't even open the article, it's going to give you the question first. You're going to answer with the knowledge you already have, and then submit it. It'll open the article. Read the article, and then re-answer the question. Now with more knowledge. All right? Okay, I'm going to move us along. Now, last week you also had an assignment of agricultural distribution processes. Now, this was, I thought, pretty simple, but I guess needed a little bit more clarification because not everybody turned this in, and I was really confused. Like, the slide presentation was assigned to each individual person, so it is already connected to your Google Classroom, but you needed to go in and actually do the work. Slide 2 gave you the instructions on what to do. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you. So slide 2 told you that you had to put steps from farm to table into order. Slide 4 gave you a blueprint of where the squares could possibly go from step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, because there's a short way from farm to table and a longer way from farm to table. All right. So you were supposed to put that together in slide 3. And then you were supposed to go to slides 5 and 7. And at each step, identify what happens in that process. After identifying what happens in the process, you were supposed to use one of these cute emojis to determine in that process, could you decrease a carbon footprint? Could you increase worker retention? Or could your company or the distribution process in this step provide for more local economies? Now, this is slide 3, and I gave you a bunch of jumbled boxes, colored boxes. Each one of them represented a step in the distribution process for agriculture. And then I gave you the arrows to move around. You were supposed to determine from farm to table, what are the steps that food takes? Now, farm is obviously the first step, right? Because the farm or a ranch is where food is grown or animals are bred for either milk or for their meat. So that's the first step, farm or ranch. Now, in the distribution process for agriculture, in this particular activity, consumer is the table. The consumer is who buys the food, consumes the food, cooks the food, uses the products, right? They are essentially the table. So that would mean that the consumer would need to go on this end over here. So I know that my farm or ranch is my first step, and my consumer is my table, is my last step. And the arrows are for you to connect the flow of the steps, right? So now I have to figure out if this is step 1, what is step 2? What is step 3? What is step 4 before it gets here? Remember, the blueprint gives you an idea. It doesn't have to be in this particular design, but it gives you an idea of how the steps go. Now, once you've figured out the flow, again, you're telling me what is happening at each step. So I know at a farm that this is where seeds are planted. This is where workers are harvesting the food. If it's a ranch, these are where the cattle are raised. If it's a dairy farm, this is where the milk is extracted from the cow. I also know at this, because in my readings and from our previous lessons, I know that at the farm or the ranch, I could provide for a local economy. So I'm going to add the little money bag, because if I go back to this slide, it shows me the money bag is local economies. Well, I think at a ranch, I also could add the little farmer, because I could increase my workers on a farm. If I had more farm space, if I had more people who could help me plant and harvest, I could feed more people, right? I could even make more money. So this was missing from a lot of people's assignments. So if you turned in your assignment and this was not completed, it's being returned to you. And you still have to do this. Or don't do it and, get graded, right? Are there any questions about this part of the work? Any clarifications? Sorry about that. Any clarification needed for this part of the work? If not, I'm going to move us along. So if you did not complete the discussion question, that needs to be done. If you did not complete this, it's being returned to you, and this has to be done. This was all last week's work. All right, moving on. Got it. Thank you, Diego. So this week, let's move on to the assignment for this week. Our learning targets for consumption is to be able to recognize the connections between advertising and consumption choices. This week, you are going to analyze an ad for a product or a food. And I also want to make sure by the end of these 2 weeks that you become critical consumers of youth-directed marketing and advertising. And what that means is that you are able to understand how brands and services target you as a youth to buy or consume their product. Now, we have watched Annie's video of the story of stuff like twice, right? So I'm not going to show the full video, but to get us in the right mindset, I want to show you the first 2 minutes of the consumption, just to bring us back to that step in the material system. So let's watch the first 2 minutes. It'll set us up for your
And that brings us to the golden arrow of consumption. This is the heart of the system.
the engine that drives it. It is so important that protecting this arrow has become the top priority for both of these guys. That's why after 9/11, when our country was in shock and President Bush could have suggested any number of appropriate things, to grieve, to pray, to hope. No, he said to shop, to shop. We have become a nation of consumers. Our primary identity has become that of being consumers, not mothers, teachers, farmers, but consumers. The primary way that our value is measured and demonstrated is by how much we contribute to this arrow, how much we consume. And do we? We shop and shop and shop, keep the materials flowing, and flow they do. Guess what percentage of total materials flow through this system is still in product or use 6 months after their date of sale in North America? 50%? 20? No, 1%. 1. In other words, 99% of the stuff we harvest, mine, process, transport, 99% of the stuff we run through this system is trashed within 6 months. Now, how can we run a planet with that level of materials throughput? It wasn't always like this. The average US person now consumes twice as much as they did 50 years ago. Ask your grandma. In her day, stewardship and resourcefulness and thrift were valued. So how did this happen? Well, it didn't just happen. It was designed. Shortly after World War II, these guys were figuring out how to ramp up the economy. Retailing analyst Victor Lebeau articulated the solution that's become the norm for the whole system. He said, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. President Eisenhower's Council of Economic Advisors chairman said that the American economy's ultimate purpose is to produce more consumer goods. More consumer goods? Our ultimate purpose? Not provide health care or education or safe transportation or sustainability or justice? Consumer goods? How did they get us to jump on board this program so enthusiastically? Well, 2 of their most effective strategies are planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence.
I'm going to stop us there because next week we'll go into more planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence. Because I'm going to have you guys go back and look at what you actually put down on consumption organizers like a month ago when we first did this, right? But I wanted to show those first 2 minutes and about 50 seconds because it sets us up for this week on consumption. In the video, Annie explains that there has been kind of this over the last 100 years or so, this growing of consumerism. And she identifies consumption, this space between distribution and consumption, as the golden arrow. Remember that? We talked about it a bit. This golden arrow is really important to identify because it is pretty much the mechanism that keeps our economy going in the United States and actually across the world, right? If there were not consumers, if there were not people like us who bought food and products, clothing and shoes and movies and hair products and all that good stuff, then there would not be companies making it, right? And the reason why it's really important to identify this golden arrow is because in 6th grade, we spent the majority of our semester learning about this first step, the extraction of natural resources and natural resources in general, right? What are renewable and non-renewable? And so as we continue down these steps, this process in the material system, it's really important that we always bring it back to the first step of extraction, because along the way, we are still using natural resources in the process. Not even worrying about, or we worry, but not even taking into account the natural resources that were originally extracted to make the product that we want. We now know that at each step, we still have to keep extracting resources in the process of manufacturing, of distributing, and then of consuming, right? And so when Annie asked, how did we get to this? She pinpointed a particular time after World War II where this idea of making things and buying things became really, really important in our culture. right? And so now we are on this kind of rat race, this hamster wheel of working and obtaining money to buy things. And the question was, how did we get there? And how do we determine what to buy? The Great Depression, well, the Great Depression was definitely part of it, right? But I'm concerned right now about consumerism and what guides us to buy the things that we buy. And so, where am I? 233. I'm going to scoop past the content vocabulary really quickly to get to the assignment that I'm trying to make the connection about. But I do want to highlight content vocabulary this week is adding 3 words that pertain to consumerism: media literacy, marketing, and advertising. Okay, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to read through the definitions of them. How much time do I have? Yeah. Actually, I have time for someone to read. Miguel, can you read media literacy for me?
The ability to locate, evaluate, and understand messages from any media source, television, radio, newspapers, etc., etc.
Excellent. Thank you, Miguel. So in media literacy, you'll see this vocabulary word come up as we talk about analyzing ads. Literacy spans all of your content areas, right? I want you to have literacy around environmental issues. I want you to have literacy, or English teacher wants you to have literature literacy. Your math teacher wants you to have math literacy, right? That's just the ability to be able to evaluate what you're reading, understand what it's trying to tell you. In this media literacy, it's being able to look at commercials, look at articles, look at YouTube ads, Instagram posts, Facebook posts, TikToks, and see what are the people trying to tell me? What are they trying to sell me? What are they trying to make me understand or believe? Right? Darlene, I saw your request, honey. I'm going to choose a couple of people that I don't normally choose, though. Okay. Sochi, can you read marketing for me?
Activities that promote the transfer of goods from a seller to a buyer.
Excellent. So when we're talking about marketing, marketing is a huge career, right? Marketing is something that you can go to college for and learn how to do, or not go to college and learn how to do, right? So a lot of people do marketing for food companies. I mean, every single company has some kind of marketing department, even your educational companies. Our school has a marketing department. We call it development. And what they do is they create these activities that promote our school, right? So Nike has a big marketing department. They're all in charge of figuring out how to share the product to the people. Okay. Let's see. Lupe, can you read the blue?
Advertising. Persuade message that informs the public about a product or serve for sale.
Excellent. Good job, Lupe. So advertising, a little different than marketing, right? Advertising are those messages. The messages that inform your public or inform you about the product or the service. So I know for me, like, I really like beauty products. I like makeup and hair stuff and lotions and stuff like that. And so I chose an ad that I'm going to show you. Now, there are some things that I'm sure you can imagine that I look for in my products and my food and the things that I use and buy. That's really important to me. It's what influences me to either buy that product or to use the service. So I want you to tell me, I want you to watch my ad, and then I want you to tell me if you can identify what that is.
We often have to choose between the beauty products we love and the values we believe in. No more. CoverGirl is now the biggest makeup brand to be Leaping Bunny certified by Cruelty Free International, which means we don't test on animals.
Okay, so very quickly, that was it. Let me show you one more time.
We often have to choose between the beauty products we love and the values we believe in. No more. CoverGirl is now the biggest makeup brand to be Leaping Bunny certified by Cruelty Free International, which means we don't test on animals.
All right, Jordan, what do you think was marketed to me in this ad that I was really interested in and would possibly make me buy this product? Jordan.
Can I go?
Wait, hold on. I want Jordan to do this one for me, please. Sorry, Lupe. I'll choose you next time. Jordan, what do you think?
What was the question again?
The question was, what do you think this company was marketing to me that would be interesting to me and make me possibly want to buy this product or this brand?
It was something about animals. They don't hurt animals or something.
Excellent. What was the word they used? The claim.
I forgot.
You forgot? Let's see. Lupe, do you know?
Can I say it?
Delilah, go for it. What was it?
Isn't it tested on animal cruelty? Something. It's something animal cruelty. It's something like that.
Yes, it is.
Can I go?
It is something like that.
You're
Diego,
welcome, girl.
Cruelty free.
cruelty free. Excellent.
Yeah,
Here.
that's what
Yep. You were right, Delilah. And Jordan, you were right too. Cruelty free. So in the beauty industry, they will use test animals for testing a lot of times, right? And so they said something called leaping bunny, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're only testing on bunnies. Usually in the beauty industry, they might use mice. They do use bunnies a lot, but they use a lot of other, not a lot, but they have other animals that they use too on testing the chemicals and the compounds that they use for makeup to make sure that when humans use it, that they won't become allergic or it doesn't cause a rash or it doesn't cause any kind of negative impact on the human. So they'll use animals. Well, obviously, I really love animals, right? I really love makeup and beauty products. And so I look for products that have this claim of being cruelty-free or organic or don't use toxins. That's a lot more interesting to me than a company that doesn't claim that. So for your work this week, you are going.
Mr. Sean?
Yeah, Delilah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you know how like you were talking about that you like using the makeup and like the stuff that you get that is animal cruelty.
Uh-huh.
So I use shampoo that is animal tested, animal cruelty. And my mom said that we could use it on like animals since it's tested on them. And I wasn't sure if we can.
No, so that's not always true either. Just because a product was tested on an animal doesn't mean that it was made for the animal. Sometimes it might not hurt them, but oftentimes there are other chemicals or things in a particular product that would not harm a human that may not necessarily kill an animal, but would not be healthy for the animal, right? So I know like different shampoos. Trust me, I have washed my dog in the past with like my Suave shampoo. It hasn't killed them, but it doesn't mean it's healthy for them. So when you see that, just because it's tested on an animal doesn't always mean that it can be used on an animal. Okay, that's a really good question, Delilah. Really good question. Let's make sure there was no other questions before I take us through because I want to get us to see our cooking demo. So May, you just made a comment, but it's a lot. So in your analyzing of an ad, I'm so glad you said that, you're going to be looking for things like that, right? So this week for your assignment, you are being graded on an environmental practice and concept. This week we're looking at the concept of consumption and advertising, right? How do products, how do companies, how do brands like Nike and Adidas and McDonald's and think of all the huge brands, Coca-Cola, how do they market towards people and create advertisements that kind of influence you to use their product or buy them? So, or buy their product. So you're going to, yeah, give me 1 second. I might be answering your question, so give me 1 second. You're going to find an advertisement of a product that claims to be green or have a positive impact on the environment. For example, they're not using any CFCs. And if you need to be reminded on what CFCs are, it's in the video, Annie's video of consumption. Or does your product claim to be all natural? Your advertisement can be a commercial, it could be a magazine ad, it can be a news story, it could be a poster, a flyer, it could be anything that is marketed towards people is an advertisement for you, right? And when you are looking for that advertisement, here are the things you need to be considering. What claims does the product make? Now, we just went through my CoverGirl ad. The claim they made was that they're cruelty-free. And you need to understand, what does that claim mean? Well, I just told you, cruelty-free means they don't test on animals. Important for me, right? Then you're going to consider, like, who holds that company accountable for those claims? So that was your question, May, or your comment, but it could be a lie, right? So who are we supposed to believe that that's actually true? Like, how do I know that CoverGirl really doesn't test on animals? Who says that, or who tells me that that is true? You do know, Javier? Great. Hold it. And then lastly, how do these claims stack up to available evidence? So that means, is there proof? For CoverGirl, could I go into their company website and look and see that they don't? Like, is there some resources or some evidence that shows me that they don't? Then the agency show me, like, what are the steps they go to even say for sure, like, they're not testing on animals, right? So these are the considerations you're going to be thinking about as you are researching your assignment. Now, here's what the assignment looks like. And just say that they're cruelty-free. You're right, May. People can just say they're cruelty-free, so that, or they could just say they're organic, or that they use all natural ingredients. And sometimes we have to research as consumers if that's true or not, or we just blindly believe them, right? So that's what this assignment is. So the worksheet has, ooh, we are behind. The worksheet has 12 questions. I'm going to give you 1 minute to read, just skim through the questions. See if there are any clarifications that you need. Go ahead and skim through. What is each question asking you? So once you find your advertisement, you're going to use that one advertisement to answer these questions. So if I was using my CoverGirl ad, that's the ad I would use to answer these 12 questions. Okay, I'm giving you 1 minute to look through. Go ahead and put in the chat or unmute if you need clarification on any of the questions.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Miguel.
What do you mean by service is being
Oh.
advertised?
So if you are choosing a product, like let's say a gardening service, then they would advertise to you, like let's say they don't use pesticides on your lawn. They only use organic fertilizers or herbicides. Then you would want to go through and see, like, okay, well, how do I know that they don't? Like, what products do they actually use? I would have to research them. So that's a service. But if you're choosing something like a pair of sneakers that you like to wear, then that's a product. So you can choose a product or a service.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, awesome. All right. So, oh yeah, but are we going to do it? You don't have to do the service. Right now, we're just analyzing ads. We're not using them. We're not buying the products or using the service, but we're analyzing how they advertise to us. Because what I want us to start identifying are what are the things that catch our attentions that we're like, ooh, I want to spend my money on that. If you're a big Fortnite player, what was it about Fortnite? What did they advertise to you? Like, you always want to buy all those skins if that's still a thing. Right?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, so how do we find the ads that we're going to be analyzing?
Online. What ads? I mean, on TV.
We just like search something up?
Yeah, you can search something up. Like, I just searched up makeup brands because I knew that that's like something I like to spend money on. What do you like to spend money on? And then look for some advertising on that. So here's the thing that we have to realize that we don't always pay attention to is that youth are targeted. You see over 40,000 ads per week. You don't even realize it when you're watching YouTube, when those pop-ups come up and they're like, subscribe to my link, or you're watching or you're on Instagram and those different ads pop up for clothes, or I don't know, if you like tennis shoes and you might see like boutiques for tennis shoes that pop up. Those are all advertisements that are geared towards you. If you watch cartoons on a Saturday morning, there's all these commercials that come up on toys and cereal and all that kind of stuff. Those are ads that are directed towards you to influence you to buy them, right? So you should be able to find ads almost everywhere. I know you skip them. I skip a lot of the ads too. All right, any questions? Because I got to move us on. And just know we're probably going to go about 5 minutes over. I'm going to try not to, but it looks like we might. Please do not hang up. You need to stay until the end. All right, any other clarification questions needed before we move on to our cooking demo? Yep, Becca, could be any ad. Any ad. The only criteria you have for the ad that you are looking for is that it must have some kind of green claim or positive impact. So it doesn't necessarily have to be cruelty-free, but it could be, for instance, I think it's Adidas, or it's a sneaker company, and I keep going back to tennis shoes. I don't know why, but there's a tennis shoe company that has started marketing a line of shoes that are made only from ocean plastic. That's super interesting to me. Adidas makes shoes out of plastic. There you go. That's super interesting to me. I am more likely to buy a shoe made from plastic because I know the impact of plastic on our ecosystems, right? So that might be something that you go and look for an advertisement for. All right. If there's any more questions or clarification needed, remember we have office hours at 3:30. You can come back on. All right, I want to move us on so I don't have to keep you on in class much longer. So here's the fun part. Well, all of it was fun. Sorry. Max made an amazing cooking demo for us. It's about 10 minutes long, so we're going to go ahead and start it now. And at the end, you'll have some questions or some time for Q&A. So if you have questions for Max after the video to ask him, you can. And then very quickly, I'm going to show you what to do for your Google form, and then you are free to go. All right? All right, here we go. Here's our cooking demo. Pay attention. You're going to love this.
Well, hello, everybody. I know hygiene is super important to all of us, especially right now, but I don't think we're really going to need the mask today, seeing as how we're all going to be in our own respective kitchens. I'm Mr. Max from Growing Great. I think many of you maybe recognized me from last week when Miss Megan introduced your Native American recipe project. And from that, you all decided that what you wanted to be demonstrated today from your poll was white corn chili. We're very excited about that today, and I know I am because I've never made it before. Give you all just a little bit of background about chili though first. It is short for chili con carne, which literally just means chili with meat. And there are many variations on this dish though, largely depending on where you are regionally. But as long as you have the spices and the chilies, you should be fine because those are by far the defining characteristics of the dish. With that said, and before we check out our ingredients, let's start with the most important part of cooking, which is washing our hands! Yeah! Now, before I start cooking, I always like to have a handy-dandy towel right here on my shoulder. It makes wiping off your hands and drying things a lot easier. You don't have to go for 20, 30 paper towels every time. A little bit better on the environment, I think. With that said, now let's look at our ingredients. White corn, diced tomatoes, our spices, kidney beans, ground beef, yellow onion, green onion, cilantro. Lastly, our cheese. After a couple minutes and a ton of crying, we have our onions. Please make sure to wash your hands again after handling the jalapenos. All right, so now we've got all of our ingredients pre-measured. This makes things so much easier. It really helps, especially after you read through the whole recipe. It's really helpful when you're not surprised by stuff. Now, let's get cooking. All right, so now we've turned on our stove and the pot is starting to get hot. And the first step is we are going to brown our meat. This can obviously be substituted for turkey if you'd rather have something a little more lean. And you can even go vegetarian. Just lose the meat altogether. I won't tell anybody. All right, and then we go. Browning the meat first on its own is really important, and I know this from experience because when you put it in there with everything else too quickly, the meat kind of gets soggy, and you want it to still have a little bit of its shape because it's the meat of the dish, right? Okay, so now that our meat is really starting to brown, we hear that sizzle. There's actually, it's interesting because you don't need any oil for this recipe because of the fat from the meat itself will provide the liquid, as you can see. And although it doesn't call for onions, I haven't made a chili that I love without them. So I'm going to add them at this point. Put them right here. And I'm going to let them sweat with the meat a little bit while it's still got some pink going on. Now we're going to just stir this around until those onions are a nice translucent clear. Okay, so next we have our spices that we're going to introduce to the equation. Because after that, it's pretty much a free-for-all and everybody's invited to the pool. So let's try and get those as dispersed as we can. So it makes it easier when we start stirring. You don't want just a giant clump of spices in the middle. You want to let everybody get a turn. Oh yeah, I can already see how the meat's changing, getting a little darker. No, that smells good. I hope it does for you too. Okay, so nice and brown. The onions are clear. You can see through them. And we are ready to add the rest of our ingredients. We've got our kidney beans, our white corn, give it a little stir. Next, we got the tomato paste. These little tiny 6-ounce cans that are usually pretty basic. Just to thicken up the sauce a little bit, not as watery as the tomatoes, which we're going to add next. Okay. Next, in we go with our first can of tomatoes. And remember, you're going to need somewhere around 29 ounces. They usually come in either like 14 or something around there ounces. This is just a 10. So you get to do a little bit of math. Next one. Use about half of that third can. So there we go. Portions. Everything is in there. And lastly, the jalapenos. Ooh. And remember, you can add as many or as little as you would like. This is, flavored to taste. All the colors marinating in there. Make sure the temperature is up high enough. Because now we're going to let it simmer for the next 10 to 15-ish minutes. So we're going to set our timer. Let's check it after 10 minutes. This is a quick recipe that doesn't need to sit long, but obviously when it comes to chili, the longer you let the flavors sit together, the more flavorful it's typically going to be. So no rush at all. All right, so we're about halfway through our simmer time now. Let's check in with our pot. And make sure that it's simmering, not boiling. And this recipe specifically asks for it to be uncovered. Let more of the moisture work off since it calls for a cup of water, but I don't think ours needs it. We got enough moisture from our beef. Remember to stir pretty frequently. Not all the time, but just don't want to let everything sit down and burn. And we'll be right back in 4 minutes. While we're waiting these last few minutes for the chili to finish cooking, we can go ahead and chop up the rest of our toppings. I like to save some time and fold them over each other. It leads to fewer cuts. And there it is. That's our time. Time to check in with the main star again. Oh, yeah. Nice. All right, so our guy's all done, and it's time to dish on up. Right after we turn off the stove, that is. And to finish it off, I'm going to grab a little bit of our cilantro, a little bit of our green onion, and a little bit of that cheese. Now, some people may like it more cheesy than that. That's totally acceptable. Now, I would love to crack open this avocado and put it on top also, but ours aren't quite ripe. But if you have ripe ones, go for it. I think it's a great combination. And now that brings us to our final step, which is time to eat. Definitely feeling all the heat coming through from the spices and the chilies. I just really love it. Could just use a little bit of that creamy coolness from some avocado, but I know what I'm having tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. I really hope it went well for you. Thank you for joining me in my kitchen. Super important to us. Super important to all of us, right? God. Mr. Max, did it again. I said my name before.
All right. Yes. I love how excited some of you are. So, just a reminder, you guys can make this chili at home. And if you have questions, this is your time to ask. I want to also remind you, please don't leave the Hangout until I've had an opportunity to tell you how to do your Google form. But I'm going to give a few minutes to ask questions. Max is on here, and he can go through any substitutes or any other clarifications you need to be able to do this yourself. Go ahead, Max. And you can unmute to ask a question or put it in the chat. I saw a lot of theirs. Amazing. Are there any questions for Max? Max, I can say, oh, okay, good. There's some coming in. There's one thing that I noticed that I learned. I love how you use the little hole in the, I didn't realize my camera's not on. I loved how you used the little hole in the cutting board. I was like, oh, is that what that's for? Like, what?
Why isn't it working?
I've never done that before. So I learned something new. And let's see. So there was a question about substituting. What can I substitute for the jalapenos because my brother doesn't like them?
You can try stuff like just bell peppers or like serranos. Those are a lot like more mild, and they don't have like the same kind of heat that probably bothers your brother. So you could try that.
Yeah. So that's like your green peppers, your green bell peppers, your red bell peppers, your yellow or your orange. They have flavor, but not.
And you'll still get the same texture that you're getting from the spicier ones.
Yeah. Yep. Diego bell pepper. Yep.
And total, this one doesn't really take that long. It can really take as long as you want, depending on how long you want it to sit in the pot, because this one really takes less than like 45 minutes prep to finish. So it's pretty quick, even if you're going at like your own pace. I think it's well under an hour.
Nice. So you guys, I want to challenge you. Keep going ahead if you still have questions while I talk. I want to challenge you to make this meal. It doesn't have to be tonight, maybe this week. And that's only if your parents allow you to use the kitchen, the stove. Maybe you can go and ask your parents or whoever makes meals, say, I have a recipe I want us to try. Could you cook it with me? Or if you feel confident enough to try it yourself, I have posted this video for you to your Google Classroom. So it's super accessible. It's also in the presentation on this slide. You can click the link. But if you make it, I would like you to either take photos of yourself making it or your family enjoying it, or a video, maybe your own little cooking segment. And you don't have to share it with the full class if you don't want to. You can email it to me so I can share it with Max and his team. But definitely ask if, and she said, no, I'm good. Maybe show your parents the video and that will inspire them. Okay. So try it. Just try it and see. It's optional. It's not mandatory. This is not an assignment that you have to turn into me, but I would love to see some of you guys try to make the corn chili. It looks delicious. And I think I'm going to make my kid make it. I like that. Looks like a free dinner night for me. So any other questions before I go and try to let you guys go in 2 minutes? I know there were some comments on how amazing that was, Max. May said that she just wanted to give you kudos, applauses. You are
Really appreciate it. It was absolutely a pleasure to make it for you guys. It was fun.
Just cutting the onions made me drool all over my computer.
Yeah, Javier, that's right. You had a comment. The onions were making you kind of tear up on your side, but you like onions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like watching you just barely put in the meat already made me drool.
I like onion too, Javier, I have to say. All right, so my vegetarians and my vegans, make sure that
Hi to my brother.
Oh yeah, and that was the other thing. Like if the ones that are vegetarian, you can obviously try like the Beyond Meat stuff if you want like the same ish texture. But if you don't even want to go that route, you can add more beans, like different kinds than just the kidney and like black beans or something, because you'll still get some of the protein without any of the actual meat. So I saw one of those questions earlier.
Excellent. All right, perfect. I'm starting to lose some of you guys, so let me go ahead and show you this. And if you have more questions, you can stay on for a couple more minutes with Max and I. But just so to make sure you guys understand what's due on Friday, even though we don't have school, your work is still due. And that's analyzing the ad, so that worksheet. Also, if you did not do the discussion question from last week appropriately, please go back through, read the article, and do that. And if you did not do the distribution activity correctly, or if you didn't do it at all, please go back and do it. Otherwise, you don't get a grade for it, okay? And then lastly, when you hang up from me, what is happening is you guys are not going back to the Google Classroom and completing the Google form and marking the assignment as done. You must do that. So you're going to go to your Google Classroom and you're going to go to the Google Hangouts, mandatory. Do the, don't worry about the Socrative, the Socrative link. It didn't work and we're going to do it next week. So don't click onto that. We'll do that next week and I'll actually go in and take that off. But the Google form has questions about what's to do. What are you supposed to do this week for your assignment in your own words? It has some check for understanding from last week's assignment. I'm trying to see that you understand what you learned. And then there's, you know, what recipe did you choose? What native people from that map from last week? And then you're going to write down 3 ingredients from the corn chili. I'm not even asking for all the ingredients, but 3 ingredients. Javier, I know you're going to put onion, right? 3 ingredients that you learned can go into corn chili. If you write them all, I don't know, I might be so impressed, right? So go, as soon as you hang up, go in and do the Google form and then go back to your Google Classroom. Make sure that you turn it in, mark it as done. Otherwise, you're getting R's on your engagement, which means red and not good, okay? All right, that's what I got for you guys. Do your work, mark stuff done, attach your work, do the Google form. Bye. Love you guys. See you next
All right,
week.
buddy. Thank you very much.